Hi, and welcome to AlphaBits. AlphaBits is an outlet for our inquisitive minds. We can't stop experimenting with new technology, and we want to share what we're playing with you. We're your hosts, Brian and David.
Hi, I'm David, the founder of the Raw Code Academy and perpetual learner, always playing with new cool tools that I'm going to share with you as part of this podcast.
And I'm Brian. I'm a developer advocate at Amazon, and I love all the shiny new toys in tech. It's kind of my passion is testing out the new stuff and seeing what's cool.
All right. For anyone tuning in on YouTube, listening to this right now, there was a podcast element you can check out with all good podcast players. On that, Brian told us why he is demoing a new Linux operating system for us today. So with that, Brian, take it away.
All right. So what we are looking at here is my daily driver desktop. This is running a derivation of Fedora Silverblue. And I got to be honest, when I first heard about this, the first thing I thought was, Fedora? I'm good. I've been an Ubuntu guy forever, or Pop OS. I love the Debian derivatives. But Silverblue and specifically Universal Blue have a draw that's really important and exciting for me. So I want to talk about what the foundation of this operating system is. It's an operating system that's built in the cloud native methodology. So if you go to the GitHub repository, which is at ublueOS, you can see that there's 46 repositories here, and each of them defines a container. So the main, this is our base. And this is the base container file that all of the other images inherit from. So it starts off by adding a few important things, packages that need to be installed in the base operating system. Each of the derivatives build off of that main container file. And the one I'm running is Bluefin, which is an Ubuntu-like experience for Fedora. And if you look at this container file, let me bump this up a bit, you can see this, it looks just like a Docker file because it is a Docker file. And the GitHub actions for this repository build the OCI container and push it up to the GitHub container repository. So let's look at my system specifically. Let's do an RPM OS tree status. And from here you can see that my system is booted off of a Docker image called Bluefin DX NVIDIA. And that comes from this repository that I just showed you on GitHub. I've got, because it's RPM OS tree, I get my current and my last known good configuration. So if I do something, I break it, I can just roll it back. But the exciting thing is when we make a change to the Bluefin repository, GitHub Actions builds those images and pushes them up to the GitHub container repository. And then I can just wait for my computer to pull it. We've got a schedule that pulls the next release every afternoon. And if there's no release, it's not a big deal. If there is, I can just check this RPM OS tree status again. And if I notice that there's an image above this, the live image, I can just reboot to get that new image. So it's everything you love about cloud native and containers, but applied to a desktop. That's really epic. We've got the whole operating system scripted with a just file. It's actually 3 just files. So if I type just, you can see all these things that are kind of friendly, helpful tools that let us get going in a way that we want to. So some of them install Flatpaks for the applications that we need. We've got DistroBox built in. We've got Nix and DevBox built in. The T package manager. We pretty much thought through everything you might need as a cloud native developer, and it's all just a keystroke away. So I love this. It's been liberating having a desktop that I can't really break easily. And if I do, I can just roll it back with a container image. It's unbelievable.
So you're just running the standard Bluefin image, or have you got your own version with any tweaks to it?
I don't have any personal tweaks, but it would be easy. I just fork Bluefin and inherit from it in the container file. But I really don't need to, because all the customizations I need, I can do either with Nix or by adding my own GNOME extensions. So I've got access to everything. You can see Nix is here. We've got DistroBox, so Podman. Don't have any containers running right now, but I could. See, previously I did the CUDA test to make sure that my NVIDIA card is able to pass through to Podman. Works great. I've got a DistroBox universal, so I could do DistroBox inter universal. And now I'm in the Microsoft dev container, universal dev container that they use on code spaces. So I've got Go in here already, but if I exit back to the host, there's no Go. So it's pretty slick.
So what's the process if you did want to add like a GNOME extension then?
Well, for GNOME extension, I would just open up the GNOME extension manager, which we have here, and that's on the wrong screen. So you could just browse GNOME extensions and install one that you like, or you can remove some of the ones that you have installed.
Okay, so you do have the ability to write to parts of your operating system. It's just the base.
Yes.
It's like the core OS.
That's correct. So the home is obviously writable, and Etsy is writable as an overlay on top of the Etsy that comes with the OS. So it does use overlays to persist operating system level changes.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, it makes me kind of, I run a Mac right now, but I keep toying. Every time I go away from Linux, I've always got this desire to go back to Linux. But
yeah, and that's kind of that's where I've lived too. I love the Mac experience, but for developing, for doing cloud native things, Linux is kind of handy to have around. I can run a Kubernetes setup because Kind is already installed, Scopio is installed, Helm is installed. All of the tools that I need are already here, and they're guaranteed to be up to date. So it's really powerful.
All right, there goes my weekend. Thanks for that.
Yeah, well, if you do give it a shot, throw it on an old laptop or something and let us know what you think, because we're trying to make this literally the best place for a developer to live, or a DevOps engineer, or any cloud native people. It's got everything you need. We've tried to think of everything, but if there's something missing, let us know. We'll add it.
Are you a contributor to?
I am, yes. I'm a contributor to Bluefin specifically, but I also built Fleek, which is a home management platform for NixOS, or for Nix. So let's do get Fleek. So I built this as part of the uBlue process so that I can have my dot files, my home configuration, follow me anywhere. So that's at getfleek.dev.
All right, lots of things to check out. That's very cool.
Yeah, good toys. All right, so I'll stop sharing. I want to see what you've got, because I'm all about some system configuration, ClickOps replacement stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, unintended, but you've covered desktop, and now I'm going to cover cloud and platform. So I have set a few things up just because getting SI, the system initiative thing, up and running does take a little bit of time. It uses dirtinf, which has a Nix shell, which takes like 10 to 15 minutes to get everything bootstrapped, but only does it once and then you're good. Okay, so this is running Tilt, which spins up the entire SI platform for you. You can see here, we've got the back end, which comprises of 4 services, the front end, the platform itself, and then the Tilt file there. So everything is up and running, everything is healthy.
So can you explain what Tilt is for us real quick?
So Tilt is, you write a Tilt file, and it basically just orchestrates containers. So you say, I have these groups of containers go back end, these groups of containers go front end. They have dependencies. The front end can only come online when the back end is online. The back end consists of these 4 container images, and they expose these ports. And then it does all of that for you. So it just gives you like a really nice dev experience.
So it's like a better Docker Compose?
It definitely competes with Docker Compose. Yeah, and it can even integrate with. So if you do have a Docker Compose file, but you just want this nice UI and ability to kind of click in and see the logs from all of the things, then you can just have it wrap Docker Compose for you. But most of the value comes from just describing all your containers and the dependencies properly within the tilt file. And also you can kind of like, it does performance enhancement things. So if you've got like an interpreted language where you have to mount the code into a container, it can actually kind of do that in a way that is a little bit more performant than the standard Docker Compose mounts, volume mounts. So yeah, it's a nice tool. It got bought by Docker about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember. It's been a while. But it's still going strong. Still a really good tool for just saying, hey, my development environment is not a single container with a database. It's a bunch of things with dependencies. Let's make this easy for people. So yeah, very cool. But that's not what we're looking at today. So I'm going to skip right past it. And we're going to now go over to here, where we have my SI workspace. Right now, SI works with AWS with a limited set of resources, but this is a very, very early proof of concept and demo from the SI team. So this is going to, I imagine, support more clouds and more resources over time. But what it allows you to do is say, well, I want a AWS region where I'm going to deploy things to. So we drag that onto the map, and we can do all the little things you would expect from a UI-based tool, resize, right-click, edit properties, anything you want. From here, I can say, okay, what region do I want to deploy to? And it loads all the regions from the API. So I can just say, hey, I'm going to deploy to London. And now test the model. So this is a visual representation for the model, which is all code. And it makes sure that your model is always valid at all points in time. If your model is not valid, you will get an error down here. But as you can see, I have happy green ticks everywhere. Green ticks are good. So we could say, well, let's have an EC2 instance. Now, this is not going to be green because there are inputs, properties on this instance, which are not going to be satisfied. So we'll let the model test, and we'll see that, okay, we have user data, security group ID, key name, and an image ID. The region name, or the region, is grayed out because it's inferred from
the region. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually, we can't drag this out now. This is now part of this. So we pop this up, and it will start to tell us. We can see here the region is green, the region is fine, but on this, the instance type is required, and it can't run the command because it's not in a happy state. So we could start to fill this out, where we drop in values to all these things. But we can probably let the inference handle most of this for us. So we know that we need user data. So for my user data, I'm going to use butane, which is just the CoreOS init system, I guess. User data provisioning system, kind of like Cloud Init.
Config generator.
Yeah. Which needs a container image, and then it has an output of user data. So you can see here the inputs are on the left, the outputs are on the right. So we can bring in and say, okay, let's have a Docker image. So we're just going to start stitching this together until we have a system we can deploy. So we can drag this to here. So now this container image is going to satisfy this. And we can change the image here to be engine X. So let's give that a second to test the model again. Testing does seem a little bit slow right now, but this is extremely early software. This is definitely putting the alpha into AlphaBits.
Yeah, it looks like it's doing a lot, though, so I can appreciate that.
Yeah. So now it tells us our Docker image is green. What I like about this is that if I say fake image does not exist, I'm trying to type in enough characters so that I don't accidentally get some random image, it should actually go red and tell us that this image can't be discovered. And if that image name does exist, then that's there we go. We got the cross. So we could pop this up. We could take a look. Okay, SI4117, image not real. So now, of course, we can rename this. So we could just say that the resource name is Nginx, the image that we want is Nginx, and now we can just kind of quickly through and tie up some of these dots. So we need a key pair, we need a security group, we need an ingress rule. We can drag our user data onto our instance, and I know my lines are not going to be particularly straight here, so let me just do this. We can see that our instance needs a security group ID, so we can connect the dot on that now.
Now, is this logged into your AWS account, so it pulls your available keys? And
it uses ambient authentication, so whatever my CLI is configured with.
Okay, perfect.
Let it test the model before I start dragging more things and slowing it down. Cool. Now we can drag our key name. We can drag our security group onto the security group ID. Our Docker container exposes ports. You can see there's an output on this container image. So we can click on this and we can say, okay, let's add, and this exposes AT on TCP. This now becomes something we can use over here and part of our security group where we can say that expose the ports our Docker container uses. So
Oh, wow.
it just kind of magically builds all of this in the background to the point where we get it happy, and then we merge this change set, and then we can deploy it. So the last thing we need is a AMI ID, which I need to grab from, I'll just grab one from the Fedora website for my region, which is here. So I'm going to click on our EC2 instance, and the image ID, I'm just going to drop that in. And the instance type, I'll just go with a T3 large. We'll keep that nice and simple. And I think that should be enough.
So is the AMI you chose for CoreOS?
Yes. Yeah. The Fedora CoreOS image, because we're using butane. So, oh wait, why did I copy this here? What we want is an AMI, and we add the image ID to this, and then we connect the dots with our instance. There we go. So that should put us in the green. So what do we have? We have a region with an EC2 instance. The user data for the instance is generated from the butane module, which knows and understands the Docker image that we want to run, which also exposes ports, which goes as an ingress rule, which is automatically configured on our security group. We have a key pair that is created for our instance and an AMI configuration. It's still complaining, but I think we're okay. So I'm going to say merge, and we merge this into the state of the world. Now, when you merge the change set, it gives you a plan, like a Terraform plan of the actions that you need to make in order to realize this configuration. We can see here, we want to create the key pair, security group, the instance, and the ingress. So we can say select all and apply. And this will now spend the next 30 to 60 seconds running through the system, creating all of these resources. Or maybe my STS access has now actually disappeared. So let me reconfigure that.
So what tool is it using in the background to apply these? Is it a CloudFormation? Is it Terraform? Is it Pulumi? Is it some other thing? Or is it its own thing?
You know what? I'm not entirely sure. I do think it's CloudFormation. I know it's using the AWS CLI to do a lot of this stuff. I don't know if it's actually calling out and just using, AWS compute key pair create. It may very well be. So let's see if we can fix my permissions real quick. Any questions while we kind of wait for this to catch up with me?
No, this is fascinating.
I'll hurry up and fail.
Infrastructure is connect the dots.
Yes. Like I said in the earlier segment, though, is that you still get the ability to drop down to code. So we can take a look at that as well if we have enough time. I think what I might do is just delete most of this and we'll just create a key pair. Well, maybe it'll catch up.
And you said this was multiplayer, so you could invite someone to come in and collaborate on this with you?
Yeah, so these workspaces, you can add more people to. You can work on your chain sets at the same time. You can go over architectures. You can do whatever it is that you need to do. Okay, that finally failed. All right, let's at least see the key pair created. That should be nice and quick. So we can go over to the management console. So we can go to EC2. And key pairs. And there's our SI2165, SI2165. That completed. Yep. You can see all the information here. So if you do want to grab this into your local machine, the private key is there. You can save it locally. Of course, you would have to add a new ingress to expose the port 22, because obviously that's not going to be there by default. And even with CoreOS, I'm not sure how much access you would get anyway. We can see now our security group was created. So we can come into our security group and we have our SI2536. So that's going to create all of those resources for us, expose and Nginx, and things are nice. You have different views. So you can come to the analyze view here, where you can click on, say, your key pair, for instance, and you can see the code that it used to create it. this looks like CloudFormation to me, so I suspect that it may be, but it also could just be a JSON representation of what gets passed to the AWS CLI. I'm not that sure. As things change, you can just refresh the resource by clicking this button here. As things change on the console, it will actually pull those changes in. And now, when you're happy with your production, you come and say, well, let's make a new change set and say we want to deploy, Bluefin, which I know we can't really do, but we could just make up our own change set and start adding more resources to our entire workspace. But it's a pretty slick system. It's very early. It's very cool. It's got a lot of promise. And I just can't wait for them to support more resources. Like being able to provision a Kubernetes cluster, an EKS cluster through this interface, I think would just be phenomenal. And even to the point where it automatically builds the provider for Kubernetes and lets me just drag and drop on Kubernetes resources or custom resources. Like, I think the power and flexibility of this platform could be a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, a lot of potential here.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, that's the first AlphaBits.
Hooray. So we got to do this again.
Awesome. I can't wait. There's enough software out there that I don't think we're going to run out of ideas anytime soon.
Not a chance we'll run out of trouble.
We hope you enjoyed the demo of both of these amazing tools. If you want to hear why we showed off these tools, check out the podcast available at alphabits.fm. Until next week, see you soon.